Right, before anything, I'd like to say thanks to the gvSIG Association for inviting me here for the, in name of the official college. We've got four speeches here. I'm from the official college for geometric and topographic engineering. But anyway, let's see if we have a little bit more time to ask some questions at the end, perhaps. So we're going to start the first speak with Mr. Rodriguez, who's a doctor in project engineering and system from the Polytechnic University in Catalonia. And he's going to speak to us about this geospatial approach for collective intelligence as a prospective approach for evaluation and strategic environmental of renewable energies. This project has been developed together with Juan Daniel Castillo de Rosas, Alex Jiménez Benez, Ismael Gómez Flores. Hello, thanks to everybody. Before anything, I'd like to start off, I'd like to say thanks on my behalf and my colleagues, the people from gvSIG, for giving us the opportunity to do this presentation, and for the National Council of Science and Technology in Mexico, who, thanks to their help, we have been able to carry out or develop. We are developing this PhD work, this doctoral work. The title, we have seen it there, so let's take a start. Let's start now. Here's a bit of an overview of the presentation that I'm going to give. I'm going to try to go as fast as possible due to time and to respect other people's time. So basically, we've got the context for the study. We've got the solution proposed for the needs that we defined. We've got the methodology or the approach which we proposed, some projects which are related to this, and we could highlight here that this project is a fruit from the combination and collaboration of other works with my colleagues on the doctorate, in particular with Daniel Castillo and Alex Jiménez in particular. I'm going to speak about the breakthroughs, advances which we have at the moment, and then I'm going to move on to the conclusions. Obviously, we haven't finished the doctorate yet, at least, well, I'm in my third year at present. Now, as background here, I'd like to say those people who don't know the terminology for strategic environmental assessment, as it's called in English, is the assessment of the effects of determinate plans and programs in environmental plans and programs. Basically, these are programs, development of programs of infrastructures. We're not bringing into here financial programs, for example. Funding doesn't come into this. In fact, there is a European directive, which governs the implementation of this approach. And also, it's worth pointing out that in Mexico, yes, there is development of the environmental impact is assessed using a practical assessment, which is carried out on a project level, but the approach for strategic environmental assessment is not being formally prepared in the law, so in legislation. So what we want to do is to try to promote and to help through our work the implementation of this type, of this approach. Not only do we want to follow a trend here, we want to actually understand and to support this work. And the third point, which I'm going to highlight here, is we have this strategic environmental assessment, includes a collaboration of a report, an environmental report, but I'd like to highlight here the consultations from the public, because we're very, very related with the public. And in this image here, we can see the perfect illustration here, the transition and an energy transition, but actually, it's not really an easy conversion, this process. We're aware that we cannot stop depending on petrol from, very suddenly, but we are convinced that by making these efforts, they are going to help the cause. So within these points, we are going to see the policies, plans and programs for infrastructure development. And this is closely related to essential features for spatial geographic planning and for urban town planning. What we have seen is also is it's necessary to have a change in the mentality, a change in practice, so we can integrate these concepts in the actual decision making itself, and which is based on the adapted to the needs and other authorities, people who are also authorities in this subject. Thomas Fisher from the University of Liverpool, for example, has highlighted the need to experiment in strategic environmental assessment and integrating it into decision-making processes. We are noting here, we're observing that apart from this necessity, there is very little experimentation going towards spatial information research. We have the solutions which are being proposed here. We have an approach which integrates knowledge and tools for collective intelligence, artificial intelligence. In the 9th conference, a lot of talk was made about the conceptualization and integrating these concepts. And within the study context, we're also tackling the energy conversion, and as far as this work is concerned, within the renewable energies, we're taking wind energy as in our country, which is Mexico. And so we present the advance and development through an app, a Geoweb, a collaborative Geoweb app, which is called Geospatial System of Collective Intelligence. It's done in real time. It's distributed. Why is it distributed? Because it can be accessed in the platform. The platform can be accessed from any place in the world, as long as you have access and there is an internet connection, and synchronizes with, because it doesn't necessarily need to be, not everybody needs to be connected at the same time, not all the users. So therefore, basically what we're proposing is to integrate these concepts, this participation by the stakeholders, and promote collective intelligence in order to reach a spatial consensus, or also what we call convergence of ideas, to have different energy proposals, projections, and then we would be able to hope to get a formulation, an improvement in implementing the political plans, the policies which are being implemented. I'm going to very briefly explain what is happening in Mexico for environmental issues. Presence, we're at the basic level, which is assessment, project assessment. So the strategic environmental assessment focuses on the plans which are integrated by the different projects. And the challenge that we have here is to integrate it within the development of policy development. And we realize that as we raise the level of analysis, we also raise the level of abstraction and complexity. So, of course, the challenge here is very important. I'm not going to stop here to speak about the models. I'm just going to say that we've chosen this. These are models which exist and which have been worked on. The two first ones, I can comment to that they're more oriented towards environmental impact, traditional impact, environmental impact assessment. And within the advantages we see that what we call the decision-centered model is more adapted to the needs and is more flexible. In fact, it's considered the strategic environmental assessment is an integral part of the decision-making process. And here, this is the approach which we're proposing and how it is integrated within the gvSIG. I'd like to go into depth a little bit more on this point, but what I want to highlight, though, if I can do, these two stages here, these two phases within the assessment process is to identify the reasonable alternatives and to evaluate and impact forecasting. So we do an exploratory study of the considerations which must be taken into account for efficiency, energy efficiency. And from here, we design a questionnaire. We select a panel of experts, which is made of the stakeholders. We apply the questionnaire. We try to reach a consensus. If not, we don't start right from the beginning, because it was already based on the SESAM in real time. The rounds, for those of you in Delphi, this is implicit, and especially spatial Delphi. When the user enters the platform, the user is going to be able to see the behavior of, and see where the consensus is, and can actually rectify his or her opinion. And especially in this example here, it's an exercise which is carried out anonymously. And here we have a few screenshots of the interface with the methodology. It practically consists of responding spatially and anonymously to a survey. In other words, you have the experts, you give them you give the user a password to be able to enter the platform. It can be opened, the exercise can be open for 10 days, 2 weeks, for example, which is predetermined. Then they are going to locate in a certain point on a map, and they're going to justify their opinion, and they're going to provide arguments in favour to defend themselves. This is quite interesting, these images, because they show you the points of different experts. And my colleague Daniel explained how the algorithm works. So we see the areas of consensus, and those which lie outside the consensus. We see the opinions here which are outside. What we're talking about here is to get as much consensus as possible. So of course, the smaller the circle is, the greater will be there will be greater consensus. The larger the circle is. I'm not going to enter into too much detail here. This also was explained in the 9th conferences. It's just to tell you that the platform is made basically through JavaScript, using JavaScript and PHP. It's been worked on with open tools, and it's also worth pointing out this has been developed. There's a plugin has been developed to integrate with gvSIG, which is in a testing stage and in a validation stage. Here are some of the related projects which we have here. We could consider these are some of the projects which have been worked on with the University of Pescara in Italy, with the armed forces in Ecuador, to find out development of certain infrastructures. Now we're going to take a look very quickly about wind energy. Really, we don't want it to be a long survey. It's only 3 questions, and there are different layers which are integrated here, which could be wind speed, an inventory of potential wind energy and existing air energy, to be able to tackle social aspects, which are the areas for indigenous communities. And these are the layers which have incremented. And here are the stakeholders who go from public servers to academics. The same experts can also integrate documentation, support documentation, which doesn't necessarily need to be georeferenced. It could be science, it could be legal articles, guides, manuals, and to To conclude, with this proposal, we want to improve the environmental impacts, and we want to also include these environmental variables in the decision-taking process. So what we understand is that the transition process, energy transition process, is a gradual but accelerated process. It must be speeded up, and that the strategic environmental assessment is an instrument which is going to help sustainability. It's going to improve in sustainability. So this is the way that we should be going. But we must remember that at the end, the finality is sustainable development, and we are respecting and following the basic principles, which are public consultation, transparency framework, assessment, and strengthening of reasonable alternatives. And finally, the aim is to contribute to building a shared structure of strategic thought. That's everything. Thank you very much. Many thanks.